The pepperoni pizza from Sal's on 4th Street isn't just food, it's a grease-soaked institution, a circle of hot cheese and nitrates that I had been looking forward to since my Monday morning stand-up meeting. I was balancing the box on my left palm, like a waiter at a high-end bistro, my right hand fishing in my pocket for the keys to my pride and joy. It was 8:30 p.m. on a Friday. The Florida air was heavy, that specific kind of humid that feels like you're walking through warm soup, but I didn't care. I had the pizza, I had a 6-pack of IPA in my backpack, and I had a date with a bucket of wax and the chrome bumper of a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1. I'd spent the last 4 years restoring that car. When I bought it, it was less classic muscle car and more rust-holding hands with other rust. I'd bled on that engine block. I'd spent more money on parts than I had on my actual education. It was raven black with gold stripes, a shaker hood, and a 428 Cobra jet engine that, sounded like God clearing his throat. It was parked in Spot 404, my deeded, covered, private parking spot at the Gilded Palms condominiums. I rounded the concrete pillar of the carport, whistling a tune, already anticipating the way the overhead fluorescent lights would gleam off the fender. I stepped around a puddle of condensation from an AC unit and looked up. I stopped. The whistling died in my throat. Spot 404 was empty. My brain refused to process the visual data. It was like a computer throwing a 404 error, ironic considering the spot number. I blinked, assuming it was a glitch in the matrix. I looked at Spot 403. Mrs. Higgins' beige Camry, which smelled like lavender and old church bulletins, was exactly where it always was. I looked at Spot 405. The rusted Volvo that belonged to the guy who traveled for business 9 months out of the year was there, gathering its usual layer of dust. But Spot 404? It was just a slab of gray concrete stained with the memories of oil, changes past. No, I whispered. The word came out sounding wet and weak. I dropped the pizza. I didn't even watch it fall. The box hit the ground, popping open, and I vaguely registered the tragedy of a perfectly good slice sliding face down onto the asphalt. But my priorities had shifted violently. I sprinted the 20 feet to the empty space, spinning in a circle as if my car might be hiding behind the concrete pillar like a shy toddler. "Where is it?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the concrete ceiling. "Where the hell is my car?" Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I checked the ground for shattered glass. If someone had stolen it, they would have had to hotwire it or pop the lock. The glass was pristine. No skid marks, no debris. It had been lifted. My hand shook as I pulled my phone out. I was about to dial 911 when I saw it. It was tucked behind a dense, overgrown hibiscus bush that the landscaping crew had neglected for weeks. A sign. It was small, maybe 12 by 18 inches, mounted on a rusted pole about 6 inches off the ground. You would have to be a badger to see it from a seated position in a vehicle. Predator towing and recovery. Strict enforcement, 24/7. Unauthorized vehicles towed at owner's expense. 555-099. I stared at the sign. I knew the rules. I had read the bylaws when I bought the condo. We had a parking pass system. My pass, a neon orange piece of plastic that was arguably the ugliest object I owned, was hanging from the rearview mirror. It had been there since 2021. It was impossible to miss. I dialed the number. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Then a click. "Predator," a voice grunted. It sounded like the voice of a man who smoked unfiltered cigarettes and ate gravel for breakfast. "You have my car," I said. I was trying to sound authoritative, like Liam Neeson in Taken, but I think I sounded more like a guy who was about to cry over a Mustang. 1969 Ford Mustang, black, plate number JREY69. There was a silence on the other end, punctuated only by the sound of typing. It was slow, agonizing typing. One key every 2 seconds. Clack, pause, clack, pause. "Yeah," the voice finally said. "We got it. Impounded at 7:42 p.m. "Why?" I demanded, my volume rising. "I live here. I have a deeded spot. Spot 404. Driver's notes say, abandoned vehicle. Tint too dark to verify permit. Vehicle appearance inconsistent with community aesthetic." I felt a vein in my forehead begin to throb. Abandoned? I drove it to the gym at 5 o'clock. It's not abandoned, it's a classic. And the tint is legal, and the permit is neon orange. "Look, buddy," the voice said, sounding bored. "I don't make the rules. I just dispatch. You want it back?" "Yes, I want it back." "That'll be $450, cash, exact change. We don't have a register." $450? I screamed. "For stealing my car from my own house?" "It's a tow fee, plus a drop fee, plus storage, plus the weekend surcharge since it's after 5 p.m. on a Friday. We close the gate at 10. You got 45 minutes. Otherwise, you can get it Monday, but that'll be another 2 days of storage. $75 a day." "Where are you?" 4000 Industrial Way, behind the cement factory. Look for the fence with the razor wire." The line went dead. I looked down at the ruined pizza. I kicked the box, sending a pepperoni slice skittering into the darkness. I opened my Uber app. My hands were shaking so bad I mistyped the address twice. The Uber driver was a chatty guy named Khalid, who drove a pristine Toyota Camry. He took one look at my face as I slid into the back seat and turned the radio down. "Bad night?" he asked. "You have no idea," I muttered, staring out the window as the suburban manicured lawns of gilded palms gave way to the strip malls and pawn shops of the outer district. "Girlfriend trouble? Tow truck trouble?" Khalid let out a low whistle. "Oh, brother, that is worse. A girlfriend can break your heart, but a tow truck company? They break your wallet and your soul. Who got you? Viper? Hercules?" "Predator." Khalid actually crossed himself. "Oof. Predator. They are the worst. My cousin, he parked at a 7-Eleven for 2 minutes to buy cigarettes. 2 minutes. Came out, car was gone. Predator took it. They said he left the premises. He was standing in the doorway." "They took it from my own driveway," I said, the rage simmering in my gut. "From my deeded spot." "That is criminal," Khalid shook his head. "But they don't care. They are vultures. You be careful there, my friend. That lot is, how do you say, sketchy." He wasn't kidding. 4000 Industrial Way was less of a business address and more of a crime scene waiting to happen. The road was unpaved, just a rutted track of mud and gravel that threatened to swallow Khalid's Camry whole. There were no streetlights, just the eerie orange glow of the nearby cement factory. We pulled up to a chain-link fence, topped with razor wire, that looked like it had been installed by a paranoid survivalist. A shack sat in the middle of a mud pit, light spilling from a single dirty window. "You want me to wait?" Khalid asked, looking at the shack nervously. "No," I said. "I'm driving my car out of here." I got out. The smell hit me instantly. Diesel fumes, wet cardboard, and stale desperation. I walked up to the shack. The door was metal, reinforced, covered in stickers for bail bondsmen and gun ranges. I pounded on it. A buzzer sounded, and the lock clicked. I stepped inside. The office was about the size of a jail cell, and smelled like one too. There was a counter separated from the waiting area by bulletproof glass that was so scratched and yellowed it was hard to see through. Behind the glass sat a man who could only be described as a thumb, with a goatee. He was wearing a grease-stained tank top, and his biceps were the size of my head. He was watching a wrestling match on a portable TV. "Name?" he grunted, not looking up. "Reynolds," I said. "The Mustang." He slowly peeled his eyes away from the screen, cracked a sunflower seed between his teeth, and spit the shell onto the floor. "ID." I pressed my driver's license against the glass. He barely glanced at it. "$450, cash." I had stopped at an ATM on the way. I slapped the stack of 20s into the metal transfer drawer. He pulled it through, counted it with agonizing slowness, licking his thumb before every bill. "It's all there," I snapped. "I count. You wait," he said. After what felt like a year, he nodded. He pushed a clipboard through the slot. "Sign here, here, and here, acknowledging receipt of vehicle, waiving liability for damage." "I'm not waiving liability," I said. "I haven't seen the car yet. If you scratched it, I'm suing you." The man, his name tag said Tiny, which was the oldest joke in the book, laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. "You sign or you don't get the car. Then I charge you for another day. Your choice, lawyer boy." I grit my teeth so hard I thought a molar might crack. I signed the paper. "Who authorized this?" I asked as he buzzed the gate open. "Who called it in? You don't patrol a gated community without a specific call. I know the law." Tiny shrugged. He pulled a pink slip from a spike on his desk and held it up against the glass. "Authorization to impound location. Gilded Palms authorized. By P. Vane. HOA President notes, vehicle is an eyesore. Enforce strict compliance. P. Vane," I read aloud. The name hit me like a physical blow. "Patricia Vane." "Yeah, the lady loves us," Tiny chuckled. "She calls in 3, 4 cars a week. Real stickler, that one. Said your car looked like, what was it? Ghetto trash." I felt a cold calm wash over me. It replaced the heat of the anger. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a targeted strike. "Can I have my keys?" I asked softly. Tiny tossed them into the drawer. "Round back, between the dumpster and the porta-potty." I walked out into the mud. My Mustang was there. It was filthy. Mud had splattered up the side panels. But as I circled it with my phone flashlight, I saw it. A scratch. A thin, white line running about 3 inches along the rear quarter panel where the tow hook must have rubbed. I ran my finger over the scratch. "Patricia," I whispered to the humid night. "You have absolutely no idea what you have just done." I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The adrenaline was coursing through my system like a drug. I spent the night in my living room, the blinds drawn, my laptop screen the only light source. I pulled up the Gilded Palms HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC&Rs. It was a 400-page PDF file that would bore a normal person to tears. To me, it was a battle plan. I read every line. I cross-referenced the parking statutes. I highlighted the sections on vehicle aesthetics and towing enforcement. Then I researched Patricia Vane. It wasn't hard. She was a realtor, semi-retired, who treated the HOA presidency not as a civic duty, but as a divine right of kings. Her Facebook profile was public. It was full of posts complaining about the decline of standards, photos of her wine nights, and endless pictures of her car. Her car. A white Mercedes G-Wagon. A G63 AMG, to be precise. A vehicle that cost upwards of $170,000. It was a tank, a massive, boxy, gas-guzzling monument to excess. I zoomed in on one of the photos. She had captioned it, "My baby fits just perfectly in spot 101, boss babe, luxury living." I looked at the photo. It was a tight squeeze. The G-Wagon was wide. The parking spots at Gilded Palms were built in the late 80s, back when cars were smaller. I made a mental note. Then I went back to researching predator towing. If I was going to win this war, I couldn't just fight Patricia. I had to fight the weapon she was wielding. Predator Towing and Recovery, LLC. Owner, Salvatore Sal Moretti. I pulled up the court records. Sal was in trouble. He had 3 active lawsuits against him for predatory practices. He had a tax lien from the IRS for $62,000. His business license was up for renewal next month, and the city council had flagged it for review due to the volume of complaints. Sal was bleeding out. He was desperate. I checked my own finances. I wasn't a billionaire, but I was a single guy in his 30s who had been part of a successful IPO for a logistics startup. I had savings. I had investments. I had what financial advisors call liquidity, and what I currently called ammunition. By the time the sun came up, painting the Florida sky in hues of pink and orange, I had a plan. It was crazy. It was excessive. It was financially irresponsible. It was perfect. Saturday morning, 9:00 a.m., I walked into the HOA office. It was located in the clubhouse, a room that smelled of lemon polish and fake flowers. Patricia Vane was sitting behind a mahogany desk that was far too large for the room. She was wearing a white blazer and enough gold jewelry to sink a small boat. She didn't look up when I entered. She was busy highlighting something on a clipboard with aggressive strokes of a neon yellow marker. "Excuse me," I said. She finished her highlighting, capped the marker with a sharp click, and looked up over her reading glasses. "Yes?" "Oh, you. Mr. Reynolds, isn't it?" "It is," I said. "We need to talk about my car." "I assume you retrieved it?" she asked, her voice dripping with faux concern. "I hope the tow yard wasn't too unpleasant. I've told them to tidy up, but, well, it is an industrial business." "You ordered the tow," I said, keeping my voice level. "You personally authorized it. Why?" She sighed, taking off her glasses and folding them. "Jason. Can I call you Jason? We have standards here. Gilded Palms isn't just a name, it's a brand. When people drive in, they expect a certain level of uniformity. Your car, that loud old thing, it looks unfinished. It looks like a project, and the tint was so dark I couldn't verify your permit. I have a duty to the other residents to ensure security." "My car is a fully restored 1969 Mach 1, I said. "It's worth more than the Honda Civic parked next to it, and the permit was visible. I have photos." "Photos can be manipulated," she waved a hand dismissively. "The tow driver agreed with me. He said the vehicle appeared abandoned." "You told him it was abandoned," I corrected. "I spoke to the dispatcher." Patricia's eyes narrowed. The sharks were swimming closer to the surface now. "Look, Mr. Reynolds, you are a renter, correct?" "I own Unit 404, I said. "Paid in full." That surprised her. She blinked. "Oh. Well, even owners must abide by the rules. Rule 14, Section B clearly states that vehicles must be in operable and aesthetically pleasing condition. That is a subjective standard, and as president, I am the arbiter of that standard." She picked up her pen, signaling the conversation was over. "Consider this a warning. Next time, park a car that fits the neighborhood, or keep it in storage. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. I have to audit the visitor parking logs." I stood there for a moment, watching her. She felt untouchable. She had the clipboard. She had the title. She had the tow company on speed dial. "You're right, Patricia," I said, forcing a smile. "Rules are important. Strict enforcement is key to a happy community." She didn't look up. "Glad you agree. Close the door on your way out." I walked out of the clubhouse. The morning air was heating up. I walked past the visitor parking. I walked past the reserved spots. I stopped at spot 11. The white G-Wagon was there. It was gleaming in the sun. I pulled a tape measure out of my pocket. I had brought it with me. I hooked the end on the yellow line and measured the distance to the tire. The G-Wagon was wide. Extremely wide. The tire was resting exactly on the white paint of the line separating spot 101 from spot 102. Technically, per the HOA bylaws I had read last night, a vehicle is considered improperly parked if any part of the tire is touching the boundary line. It was a tiny infraction, a matter of inches. A normal person would ignore it. A normal HOA president would certainly ignore it. But Patricia Vane wanted strict enforcement. I snapped the tape measure back. Not yet. I couldn't strike yet. If I called it in now, she would just call her buddies at Predator Towing and they would laugh it off. She had the power because she controlled the contract. I needed to sever the head of the snake. I got in my Mustang, careful not to look at the scratch on the rear quarter panel, and drove toward the industrial district. I had a meeting with a man named Sal. Sal's diner, no relation to the pizza place, was a greasy spoon where the coffee tasted like battery acid and the pancakes were the size of hubcaps. I sat in a booth in the back, checking my watch. At 11:15 a.m., a man walked in. He looked exactly like I expected the owner of a failing tow company to look. He was wearing a leather jacket despite the 80-degree heat, had slicked back gray hair, and looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He scanned the room, saw me, and hesitated. I waved. He slid into the booth opposite me. "You the guy from the email? Logistics investor?" "That's me," I said. "Jason." "Sal," he grunted. "You look young. You a cop? Do I look like a cop?" "You look like a tech bro," Sal said, grabbing a menu. "Which is worse, tech bros sue people." "I'm not here to sue you, Sal. I know your situation. I know about the IRS lien. I know about the lawsuit from the insurance company regarding the incident with the Corvette last month." Sal flinched. "That wasn't our fault. The guy parked on a hill. The handbrake failed." "Doesn't matter whose fault it is," I said. "Legal fees don't care about fault. You're drowning, Sal. You're looking at bankruptcy within 6 weeks." Sal dropped the menu. He stared at me, his eyes tired and bloodshot. "What do you want? You want to buy a truck?" "No," I said. "I want the whole thing. The LLC, the yard, the trucks, the licenses, and the contracts." Sal laughed. It was a bitter sound. "You want to buy a tow company? Why? You want to get yelled at by soccer moms and drug dealers all day?" "I have my reasons," I said. "I'm offering a cash buyout, today. We can go to a notary right now." I slid a piece of paper across the table. It had a number written on it. Sal looked at the number. His eyebrows shot up. It wasn't a fortune. Predator towing wasn't worth a fortune. But it was enough to pay off the IRS, settle the lawsuits, and leave him with a tidy nest egg. "This is real?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Certified cashier's check is in my bag," I said. "But there are conditions." "Name 'em." 1. The sale is silent for 30 days. As far as the public knows, you're still the owner. As far as the employees know, you're bringing on a silent partner to handle operations. "Done," Sal said immediately. "I hate those drivers anyway." 2. I get immediate operational control. today. I call the shots on dispatch. You want the headache? You got it. 3, I said, leaning in. You have a contract with Gilded Palms Condominiums. I want the file on that. Specifically, I want to know about the arrangement with Patricia Vane. Sal's eyes darted to the side. Patricia? She's a good client. High volume. She's getting kickbacks, isn't she, Sal? Sal hesitated. Look, it's standard industry practice. Referral fees. She calls in a tow, she gets $50. Keeps the volume up. Everyone makes money. Except the residents, I said. Sal shrugged. They shouldn't park illegally. I want the ledger, I said. I want proof of every payment you made to her. Sal looked at the number on the paper again. He looked at me. He realized he didn't care about Patricia Vane. He cared about retiring to a place where they didn't have extradition treaties. I got a spreadsheet, Sal said. Detailed. Dates, times, amounts. Perfect, I said. I pulled the cashier's check out of my bag. Let's go find a notary. By 2 p.m., I was the proud, anonymous owner of a towing company that had a 1-star rating on Google. By 3 p.m., I was standing in the muddy lot of Predator Towing, wearing a polo shirt I had bought at Target. I had gathered the staff. There were 3 drivers. Tiny, the thumb man I had met the night before. A guy named Rico, who had a teardrop tattoo and looked like he carried a switchblade in his sock. And a nervous kid named Kyle, who looked like he was 12. They stood, around me, looking confused. Sal had introduced me as the new operations director, and then practically ran to his car to drive to the bank. All right, listen up, I said, pitching my voice to carry over the sound of the cement factory next door. Things are changing. First off, nobody eats in the dispatch booth anymore. It smells like a locker room in there. Cleaning crew comes tomorrow. Tiny crossed his arms. Who died and made you king? Sal didn't die, I said. But he did cash a very large check. I sign your paychecks now, Tiny. And speaking of paychecks, everyone gets a 10% raise effective immediately. Tiny's arms uncrossed. Rico raised an eyebrow. Kyle looked like he might faint from joy. Serious? Tiny asked. Serious. But I expect professionalism. No more scratching cars, no more skimming cash, and we are going to follow every contract to the absolute letter. Sure, boss, Rico said. Whatever you say. Good, I said. Tiny, I need to talk to you about the Gilded Palms account. Tiny grinned. Mrs. Vane, she's a gold mine. I was going to swing by there tonight. She said the blue pickup in spot 22 has a flat tire. Wants it gone. We are going to suspend patrols at Gilded Palms, I said. Tiny looked confused. But the money. We only tow on specific call-ins, I said. And we only tow if the violation is undeniable. I want photos, high-resolution photos. If you tow a car and the tire is even an inch inside the line, I will fire you. Do you understand? Okay, Tiny said slowly. She ain't gonna like that. I'll handle her, I said. Actually, I have a special job for you tonight, Tiny. I need you to be on standby. I'm going to call in a priority tow around 2:00 a.m. Priority? Yeah, I smiled. A cold, predatory smile that felt right at home in the tow yard. We have a repeat offender, a real nuisance vehicle. I want the big truck, the flatbed. For what kind of car? Tiny asked. A Mercedes, I said. A G-Wagon. I spent the rest of the afternoon setting the trap. I went back to Gilded Palms. I walked the parking lot. I took photos of the lines. They were old, faded, chipped. The yellow paint was flaking away. It was hard to tell where one spot ended and the next began. This was a problem. If I towed Patricia for being over the line, she could argue the lines were ambiguous. She could wiggle out of it. I needed the lines to be undeniable. I called a contractor friend of mine, Mike. Mike ran an asphalt and striping business. "Mike," I said into the phone, "how fast can you restripe a parking lot?" "Depends on the size," Mike said. "And the notice. 50 spots. Tonight, after dark, I'll pay double. I can be there at 9. "One catch, Mike," I said. "I need you to follow the county code strictly. The spots are currently painted at 9 feet wide, but the code for this density is 8 feet, 6 inches. "You want me to make the spots smaller?" Mike asked. "People are gonna hate that." "The current paint is non-compliant," I said, channeling my inner Patricia. "I just want strict adherence to the rules, strict uniformity." "You're the boss," Mike said. 8-6 it is. We'll burn off the old lines and lay down thermal plastic. Bright yellow. It'll look like an airport runway." "Perfect." At 9:00 p.m., Mike's crew arrived. They worked efficiently under portable floodlights. The smell of burning rubber and fresh paint filled the air. Most residents were inside, watching Netflix, oblivious to the fact that their parking lot was being surgically altered. By midnight, they were done. The lot looked incredible. The blacktop was sealed. The lines were a vivid, aggressive yellow, and the spots were noticeably tighter. I stood on my balcony and looked down at Spot 101. Patricia's G-Wagon was parked there. She hadn't moved it all evening. Because the new lines were painted strictly to code, shifting the grid slightly to the left to center the layout, her G-Wagon was now sitting significantly over the line. Before, it was a minor infraction. Now? The bright yellow thermoplastic line ran directly under the center of her left tires. She was occupying Spot 101 and a solid foot of Spot 102. I checked my watch, 12:15 a.m. I went inside and made a cup of coffee. I waited. I wanted to make sure she was asleep. I wanted the element of surprise. At 2:30 a.m., I picked up my phone. I dialed the dispatch number. "Predator," Kyle answered. He was on the night shift. "Put Tiny on," I said. A moment later, Tiny's voice came on. "Boss?" "It's time," I said. "Location, Gilded Palms, Spot 101. Vehicle, white Mercedes G-Wagon." The president's car?" Tiny sounded terrified. "Boss, are you sure?" "Violation, parking across multiple spaces, encroaching on visitor parking. Oh, and Tiny?" "Yeah?" "Check the registration sticker on the plate. I took a closer look earlier. It's yellow." "Yellow is 2024, Tiny said. "It's 2025. "Exactly, expired registration. That's a mandatory tow under the contract she signed." "She's gonna kill me," Tiny whispered. "No," I said. "She's going to try. But you work for me now, and I authorize the tow. Go get her." I hung up the phone and stepped out onto the balcony. The night was quiet. The crickets were chirping. Far off in the distance, I heard the rumble of a heavy diesel engine getting closer. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The low rumble of the diesel engine was a lullaby to my ears, but to the residents of Gilded Palms, it was about to be a rude awakening. I watched from my balcony, hidden in the shadows of a potted palm, sipping cold coffee. Tiny was good. I had to give him credit. He killed the headlights of the wrecker, a massive Ford F-650 that looked like it ate lesser trucks for protein, as he rolled through the open gate. I had given him the gate code Patricia had changed last month to keep riffraff out. He glided the beast of a truck through the parking lot with surprising stealth. The only sound was the crunch of tires on the freshly painted asphalt. He positioned the truck perpendicular to Spot 101. This was the tricky part. A Mercedes G63 AMG is a four-wheel drive brick of German engineering. You can't just hook the back wheels and drag it. You'll shred the transmission, and then I'd be liable for damages. And despite my rage, I was a businessman now. I didn't want to buy her a new transmission. I wanted to sell her back her own car. Tiny hopped out. He was moving fast. He didn't even look at the building. He went straight to the side of his truck and pulled out the dollies, those little pop-up wheels that go under the tires you aren't lifting. Clank. Clank. The sound echoed slightly. I held my breath. He jacked the dollies under the front wheels of the G-Wagon. Then he moved to the back. He lowered the stinger, the metal arm that grabs the tires. Worthy. Hydraulics whined. The metal claws snatched the rear tires of the Mercedes. He hit the lift lever. The G-Wagon rose into the air, its rear end hoisting up at a sharp angle. It looked indignant. It looked like a purebred dog being picked up by the scruff of its neck. And then, the symphony began. Whoop, 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 whoop. The alarm system on a G-Wagon is designed to alert you if someone breathes too heavily near the door handles. Being hoisted into the air by a tow truck triggered the nuclear meltdown setting. The horn blared in a rhythmic, deafening cadence, and the headlights flashed like a strobe light at a cheap rave. Lights in the complex began to flick on. First the unit directly above Patricia, then Mrs. Higgins' place, then the guy across the way. I leaned over the railing, grinning like a Cheshire cat. The front door of Unit 101 flew open so hard I thought it might come off the hinges. Patricia Vane exploded onto the walkway. She was a vision. She was wearing a silk robe that was a blinding shade of fuchsia, and her hair was in a frantic disarray that suggested she slept in a wind tunnel. "What is going on?" she screamed. Her voice was impressive. It cut through the alarm noise like a hot knife through butter. She looked down. She saw the massive tow truck. She saw her beloved G-Baby dangling in the air. "No, no, stop!" She ran down the stairs. She didn't take them one by one. She practically fell down them, stumbling onto the pavement in fuzzy slippers. "You! Stop!" she shrieked, running up to the truck. She started banging her fists on the driver's side door. "Put it down, that's my car!" Tiny sat inside the cab, calm as a monk. He rolled the window down exactly 3 inches. "Step away from the vehicle, ma'am," he boomed. His voice was deep, amplified by the cab. "I am the HOA president," Patricia screamed, her face contorted into a mask of pure fury. "I own this parking lot. I have the contract. Who are you?" Tiny held up a clipboard. "Work order, violation of parking statutes. Vehicle is straddling the line. Also," he paused for effect, checking the paper. "Registration expired December 2024. Mandatory tow per community guidelines." "It is not expired," she howled. "And the line was moved. Someone moved the lines." "Lines look pretty permanent to me, ma'am," Tiny said, nodding at the bright yellow thermoplastic that was clearly visible under the strobe light of her alarm. "Fresh paint. Very professional." "I will sue you!" she screamed, grabbing the door handle and yanking. It was locked. "I will have your job. I know Sal. I will call Sal right now." "Sal's retired," Tiny said. "New management." "Who? Who is the manager?" "Name's on the invoice when you pick it up," Tiny said. He put the truck in gear. The air brakes hissed, a sharp PSSHT that made Patricia jump back. "Stand clear. Heavy machinery operating." "You can't leave. This is theft. Help. Police. Someone call the police." Didn't hesitate. He feathered the clutch, or the automatic equivalent, and the massive truck began to roll. The G-Wagon bounced gently on the suspension as it was dragged away, its alarm still wailing whoop, whoop, whoop into the night. Patricia chased it. She actually chased the tow truck. She ran about 50 feet, slippers slapping against the asphalt, screaming incoherent threats until the truck picked up speed and turned the corner out of the gate. She stopped in the middle of the road, chest heaving, hands on her knees. The complex was silent, save for the distant, fading wail of her alarm. Neighbors were standing on their balconies, watching. Mrs. Higgins was clapping slowly. Patricia straightened up. She looked around, realizing she had an audience. She smoothed her robe, tried to fix her hair, and pointed a shaking finger at the empty space where her car used to be. "This isn't over," she yelled at the empty parking spot. "This is a conspiracy!" I took another sip of my coffee. "It sure is, Patricia," I whispered. "It sure is." The police arrived at 7:45 a.m. I knew they were coming. Patricia Vane was not the type of woman to accept defeat. She was the type of woman who weaponized the legal system. I was ready. I had showered, shaved, and put on a nice button-down shirt. I looked like a model citizen. I had a pot of fresh coffee brewing. When the knock came, it was authoritative. Bang, bang, bang. I opened the door. 2 officers stood there. One was a young guy who looked like he was fresh out of the academy, looking eager. The other was older, looking tired, with a nameplate that read Sergeant Ramirez. Behind them stood Patricia. She was dressed now in her power suit, a beige pantsuit that made her look like an angry beige wall. Her eyes were puffy. "Good morning, officers," I said, stepping aside. "Can I help you?" "That's him!" Patricia shouted, pointing a finger that was trembling with rage. "He's the one! He was on the balcony! He was laughing! He orchestrated the theft of my vehicle!" Sergeant Ramirez sighed. It was the sigh of a man who had dealt with too many neighborhood disputes and not enough coffee. "Sir, are you Jason Reynolds?" "I am," I said politely. "Is there a problem?" "Ms. Vane here is filing a report for grand theft auto. She claims you instructed a tow company to illegally seize her vehicle last night." I looked at Patricia, widening my eyes in mock surprise. "Theft? Patricia, I thought your car was towed. I heard the alarm." "Don't play dumb with me," she spat. "The driver said new management. You were the only one who argued with me about towing. You did this out of spite because I towed your rust bucket." "Officer," I said, turning to Ramirez. "I admit I was frustrated when my car was towed last week, but I'm a software engineer. I don't steal cars. If her car was towed, presumably it was for a violation?" "There was no violation," Patricia screamed. "My tags are valid, and he painted the lines. He shrank the parking spots." Ramirez looked at me. "Did you paint the parking lines, sir?" "The HOA bylaws state that the parking lot must be maintained to county code," I said calmly. "I simply facilitated a contractor to ensure compliance. I paid for it out of my own pocket as a donation to the community. The previous lines were faded and non-compliant." "You made them smaller," Patricia insisted. "I made them legal," I corrected. "Standard compact zoning. 8 feet, 6 inches. If your vehicle doesn't fit, perhaps it's too large for the designated residential zone." Ramirez looked at Patricia. "Ma'am, did the tow company give you a reason for the tow?" "They said expired tags," she yelled. "Which is a lie. My husband handles the registration. It's valid until next year." I reached for my iPad, which was sitting on the hallway table, pre-loaded and ready. "Actually, officer," I said, "since I had such a bad experience with this tow company, Predator. Towing, right? I checked their website. They have a transparency portal. They upload photos of every tow. I looked it up this morning out of curiosity." I tapped the screen and held the iPad up to Ramirez. The image was high definition. It showed the rear of the G-Wagon. The flash of the camera reflected off the license plate. "Zoom in there," I suggested helpfully. Ramirez leaned in. He squinted. "That's a yellow sticker, ma'am." Patricia froze. "What?" "Florida registration stickers follow a color rotation," Ramirez said, his voice flat. "Yellow is 2024. We are currently in January 2025. Your tags are expired." That's impossible," Patricia stammered. "My husband, looks like hubby forgot to go to the DMV," I said, unable to help myself. "And here," I swiped to the next photo. "This is the tire placement." The photo showed the massive off-road tire of the Mercedes crushing the bright yellow line, sitting fully 4 inches into the next spot in violation of Rule 14, I quoted. "Strict uniformity. No vehicle shall encroach upon neighboring spaces." Ramirez straightened up and handed me back the iPad. He looked at Patricia. "Ma'am, this isn't a theft. The tow company had probable cause. You have expired tags and you were double parked." "But he painted the lines!" she shrieked, grasping at straws. "Is the paint dry?" Ramirez asked. "Yes, but then the lines are the lines. You parked over them. This is a civil matter. You need to contact the tow company to get your car back. We can't help you." "You're useless!" Patricia yelled at the police officer. A bold strategy. "I pay your salary." "Have a nice day, ma'am," Ramirez said, tipping his cap to me. "Sir, sorry to disturb you." "No problem, officer. Stay safe out there." I closed the door. I leaned my back against it and let out a long, shaky breath. Phase 2 was complete. Now for the main event. Getting to the Predator towing lot requires a certain level of commitment. It's not near anything. It's in that weird industrial limbo where the city puts the things it doesn't want to look at. Water treatment plants, cement factories, and impound lots. I arrived at the lot around 9:30 a.m. I parked my Mustang around the back, out of sight. I entered through the rear door of the trailer. The office was buzzing. Or rather, the fly zapper in the corner was buzzing. Tiny was sitting at the desk, looking like the cat who caught the canary. "She called 3 times, Tiny said, grinning. "Screamed at Kyle, threatened to burn the place down." "Excellent," I said. "She's on her way?" "GPS on the Uber says 2 minutes out." I adjusted my collar. I was wearing a black polo shirt with the Predator towing logo embroidered on the left breast. I had ordered it express shipping 3 days ago. "Go take a break, Tiny," I said. "I'll handle the front desk." Tiny saluted and disappeared into the back room. I sat in the chair. It squeaked. The smell of stale cigarettes was still faint, but the pine sol I had ordered the crew to use was fighting a valiant battle. I watched the security monitor. A silver Toyota Camry pulled up to the gate. Patricia Vane got out. She didn't look like a president anymore. She looked like a woman on the edge of a nervous breakdown. She was stomping through the mud in high heels. She hit the buzzer. I let it ring twice before buzzing her in. She threw the door open. The little bell above the door jingled cheerfully, a stark contrast to her face. "Where is the manager?" she bellowed. She didn't even look at me. She was looking around the room, expecting to see Sal or Tiny. I swiveled the chair around slowly. "Good morning, Patricia." She stopped. She blinked. Her brain tried to make the connection, but the synapses weren't firing. "Jason?" she asked, confused. "What are you doing here? Did you get towed again?" "No," I said, standing up. I clasped my hands behind my back. "I'm working." "Working?" she scoffed. "You? A software engineer working at a dump like this?" "I own the dump, actually." The silence that followed was heavy. It had mass. It pressed down on the room, suffocating the sound of the fly zapper. Patricia's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She looked like a fish that had been pulled onto a dock. "You what?" "I bought the company," I said, my voice conversational. "Last Tuesday. Sal was in a bit of financial trouble. I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I now own Predator Towing, the land, the trucks, and all active contracts, including the one with gilded palms." She staggered back, her hand finding the counter for support. You can't. That's conflict of interest." "Is it?" I asked. "I'm a resident ensuring the rules are enforced. Isn't that what you wanted? Strict uniformity. Aesthetics. I was so inspired by your leadership, Patricia, that I decided to put my money where my mouth is." "You set me up," she whispered. Her face was pale. "The lines. The paint. You did it to trap me." "I brought the lot up to code," I said. "And you, the president, failed to park within the legal lines, and you failed to register your vehicle. I didn't make you do those things, Patricia. I just provided the consequences." "I want my car," she hissed. "Give me my car right now, or I will sue you for everything you have." "Happy to," I said. I sat back down and tapped the keyboard. "Let's run the invoice." I made a show of typing. "Okay, standard tow fee for a Class B vehicle. That's $250. It was a night tow, so there's the after-hours surcharge, $150. Oh, and Big Bertha is a heavy-duty wrecker, so there's a heavy equipment fee, $200. I looked up at her. She was vibrating with rage. "Storage fee, $75. And of course the administrative fee for processing the expired registration with the DMV, $50. I hit print. The dot matrix printer I had kept specifically for this moment screeched into life. Rear. It took a solid 30 seconds to print the single page. I ripped it off and slid it across the counter. "Total comes to $725. Patricia snatched the paper. "This is extortion. Sal never charged this much." "Sal was running a charity," I said. "I'm running a business. Inflation, you know?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a platinum American Express card. She slammed it on the counter. "Just take it. I'm going to dispute the charge the second I walk out of here." I looked at the card. I didn't pick it up. I pointed to a small, handwritten sign taped to the bulletproof glass. Cash only. No checks. No credit. No exceptions. "Sorry," I said, giving her the same icy smile she had given me in the HOA office. "Machine is down. Cash only. Just like you insisted when you set up the contract with Sal to avoid paper trails. Remember?" Her eyes went wide. She remembered. She had insisted on cash payments for the towing fees so that residents couldn't do chargebacks. "I don't have $700 in cash," she screamed. "There's a gas station about a mile down the road," I said, checking my watch. "They have an ATM, but you might want to hurry. The daily storage fee rolls over at noon. That's another $75. "You are evil," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm just a guy who likes his parking spot, Patricia." She stared at me for another second, realizing I wasn't going to budge. Then she grabbed her purse, spun around, and stormed out of the office. I watched on the monitor as she began the long, muddy walk down Industrial Way toward the gas station. It had started to rain. Patricia got her car back around 11:30 a.m. She threw a wad of crumpled $20 bills at Tiny through the slot, refused to sign the receipt, and peeled out of the lot so fast she almost took the gate with her. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought shame would keep her quiet. I underestimated the ego of an HOA president. 2 days later, on a Monday, flyers appeared on every door in the Gilded Palms complex. They were printed on bright red paper. Emergency Town Hall meeting tonight, 7:00 p.m. Agenda: termination of vendor contracts and resident misconduct. Mandatory attendance encouraged. She was going for the nuclear option. She was going to try to turn the neighborhood against me. She was going to frame me as a stalker, a harasser, a madman who bought a tow company just to terrorize a poor, defenseless old woman. I walked into my apartment and looked at the flyer. I picked up my phone. "Tiny?" I said. "You busy tonight?" "Nope. Watching TV?" "Put on a tie," I said. "We're going to a meeting. And bring the file. The whole file." The community center was packed. It was standing room only. Nothing brings neighbors together like drama. Patricia was on the stage. She had set up a podium. She looked revitalized. The rain and the mud were forgotten. She was back in her element. She held a microphone like a scepter. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began, her voice booming. "We face a crisis in Gilded Palms, a crisis of security, a crisis of harassment." She pointed a dramatic finger into the crowd. I was standing in the back, leaning against the wall, holding a file folder. "That man," she shouted. "Jason Reynolds, he is a menace. He is engaged in a systematic campaign of terror against this board. He illegally modified our parking lot. He purchased a towing company solely to target me. He is stalking me." The crowd murmured. People turned to look at me. I saw some frowns. Stalking was a serious accusation. "He towed my car from my own spot," she continued, playing the victim perfectly. "He charged me extortionate fees. He is using our community funds to enrich himself." "That's a lie," I said loudly. "You are out of order," she screamed. "I have the floor. I motion to immediately terminate the contract with Predator Towing and to fine Mr. Reynolds $5,000 for conduct unbecoming of a resident." "Seconded," yelled a woman in the front row. Karen, yes, actually Karen, Patricia's VP and lackey. "We need a vote," Patricia yelled. "Point of order," I shouted, walking down the center aisle. "Before we vote on firing a vendor, shouldn't the community know why the vendor was hired in the first place?" "Sit down," Patricia shrieked. "Security!" We didn't have security. We had old Mr. Henderson, who was asleep in the corner. I reached the front of the room. I plugged my laptop into the HDMI cable that was sitting on the AV table. Patricia tried to block me, but I was faster. The projector screen behind her flickered to life. "I did buy the towing company," I addressed the crowd. "It's true. And do you know what I found in the books?" I clicked the remote. An Excel spreadsheet appeared on the giant screen. "This is the ledger from the previous owner, Sal," I said. "Highlighted in red are payments labeled Referral Commission." I pointed to the screen. "Every time your car was towed, every time your cousin's car was towed, every time a delivery driver was towed, Sal paid $50 to a specific bank account." The room went deadly silent. "Whose account is that?" Mrs. Higgins called out from the third row. "It's an account under the name Vane Consulting LLC," I said. The gasp that ripped through the room was audible. "That is a lie!" Patricia screamed, her face turning purple. "Those were administrative fees for coordinating logistics." "Coordinating?" I laughed. "Patricia, you were getting kickbacks. You were calling in tows on your own neighbors to make $50 a pop. I did the math. You made $12,000 last year alone." "She towed my grandson on Christmas Eve," someone shouted from the back. "You got $50 for that?" "She towed my nurse," another resident yelled. The mood in the room shifted instantly. It went from curiosity to mob justice. "And regarding the parking lines," I continued, clicking to the next slide. It was a letter from the county fire marshal. I had the lot inspected. The previous lines, the ones Patricia liked, were illegal. They were too wide, which reduced the fire lane width. If a fire truck had needed to get in here, it couldn't have. I paid to fix it to save lives. Patricia just didn't like it because she can't park her tank of a car. Lies, all lies, Patricia was shouting into the microphone, but nobody was listening. I have a motion, I said, turning to the crowd. I motion to remove Patricia Vane from the board immediately for embezzlement and fraud. I second, Mrs. Higgins yelled, standing up and waving her cane. All in favor? I asked. Every hand in the room went up. Even Karen, the VP, slowly raised her hand when she saw the look in the room. Motion carries, I said. Patricia stood there, alone on the stage, the projection of her financial misdeeds shining on her face. She dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a loud thump. She walked off the stage, through the side door, and didn't look back. The fallout was swift. Patricia resigned from the board the next morning via a furious email written in all caps. She put her condo on the market 3 days later. She couldn't walk to her mailbox without someone asking her if she needed a tow. The sale of her condo closed within a month. She moved to a gated community in Sarasota. I heard they have a very strict HOA. I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. As for me, I kept the towing company, but I made some changes. I fired the predatory spotters. I fired Rico. He was stealing loose change from cup holders. I kept Tiny. We rebranded. We're called Good Neighbor Towing now. We have a new contract with Gilded Palms. It's simple. We don't tow unless a resident calls us because someone is blocking them in. No prowling, no kickbacks, no nonsense. And the parking lot, we kept the narrow lines. It turns out, when people actually park inside the lines, you can fit more cars. Who knew? It was a Friday night, about 3 months after the incident. I drove my Mustang into the complex. The engine purred. The chrome gleamed. I pulled into spot 404. It was empty. It was waiting for me. I got out, locking the door. I looked at the spot next to me, spot 403. Mrs. Higgins was there, unloading groceries. Evening, Jason, she called out. Nice night. Beautiful night, Mrs. Higgins, I said. Need a hand with those bags? Oh, that would be lovely. I helped her carry her bags to the elevator. As we walked, a delivery truck pulled up and parked in the fire lane, flashing its hazards. Oh dear, Mrs. Higgins said. That's illegal, isn't it? I looked at the truck. It was just delivering a pizza. Technically, I said. But I think we can let it slide, unless... Unless he forgets the pepperoni, I grinned. Then I might have to make a call. Mrs. Higgins laughed. We got into the elevator. I had spent $50,000 to buy a towing company, repave a parking lot, and stage a coup, all because someone took my car. And as the elevator doors closed, I realized something. It was worth every penny.